Hi, everybody. My name is Anna Bryce, and I am the VP of Programming here at the AMA Phoenix. And I would like to welcome everybody. We're thrilled that you're able to be here with us. And we are thrilled to bring Tami Nealy back. She had presented for us a little over a year ago, and this was just directly before the pandemic started. So we thought it made sense to bring her back because lots has changed in the last year. So we will get on to that in just a minute. Real quickly, I would like to thank our sponsors. We cannot thank them enough. They make everything we do possible, and they are great partners to us. I would particularly like to point out Financial Potion and Taylor Wellman, who is our host for the day, and she hosts all our webinars. If you have video needs, please consider giving Taylor a call. And we would also like to thank our supporters, and these are the companies who employ our board members, and that really makes a big difference because we put a lot of time into what we do, and having the support of our companies really helps. So we thank them. And I just would like to get right into introducing Tami Nealy. She is the VP of Communications at Find Your Influence. And in her role there at Find Your Influence, she helps tell the story of the industry's first influencer marketing solution. She also oversees Find Your Influence Talent Management, a boutique talent management agency operating as a division of Find Your Influence. So without further ado, I would just like to get into presenting Tami. Thank you, Tami, again for being with us. And we are really excited to hear what you have to say, because I know a lot has changed just in the world in general. So really interested in hearing what has changed with influencer marketing. Thank you, Tami.
Thanks, Anna, for the introduction, and thanks, Taylor, for the technology to make this possible. Can you confirm you can see my screen now? Wonderful. So as Anna mentioned, I was really excited to be a guest I think it was last January with the American Marketing Association to talk about influencer marketing. And then the pandemic hit and influencer marketing changed. I mean, it really did. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today. Lessons that we've learned as an industry about the pandemic. And as we get started, Taylor, could you put up the first poll question? I'm curious, for those of you who are here today, if you've had experience working with influencers. Give everybody a few minutes to submit their answers, a few seconds to submit their answers. Taylor, will those results pop up on my screen? Oh, they will. There we go. So 41% of you have worked with influencers, while 59% of you haven't. So hopefully I've got a little bit of information today to speak to those of you who have, and to be a little bit informational for those of you who have yet to work with influencers. So it's funny, I started with this slide last year, and I think it's still relevant to give you a background on what influencer marketing is. A lot of people may think that it's Kim Kardashian talking about her makeup brand on Instagram. Yes, it is that, but it's also anybody with any significant following, and a significant following could be 1,000 followers. It could be 500,000, it could be 5 million followers on any social media platform, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, the list goes on and on. But brands work with influencers really to use the power of their voice to speak to their audience. And the brands are often selecting influencers because of their audience. Their audience is their target market. That's who wants to buy. So that's who they're looking to sell their products to. So I think our VP of Client Development, Samantha Lay, says it best, that influencer marketing is that critical link between relationship marketing and performance marketing. And so we're going to get into today about how influencer marketing is performance marketing. But I just really wanted to set the stage for what influencer marketing is. It's using those powerful voices that exist online to help spread your message. And so in March, we were moving along. I would say it was probably even early February, or late February. We were moving along and business as usual. And then states were going into lockdowns. The pandemic really hit the US. We were looking at it beyond what was going on in Seattle, and we were seeing it stretch to New York, coast to coast. It was hitting small towns, big towns. And like many of you know, who are here because you're marketers, you likely had to pause. Influencer marketing paused, advertising paused, influencers were just told to put on hold. We had influencers who were supposed to be activating it at South by Southwest, and then South by Southwest was canceled. So those influencer dollars were gone. Those campaign dollars were gone. And it took a while for everybody to really have to say, okay, what are we going to do next? We have to make sure that the messaging that we're using, that the brand is using directly, that they're giving influencers to use, that they're not tone deaf, that they're responding to the new world that we were living in. And if you remember back last March, we didn't know if this was like 2 weeks. We were talking about flattening the curve. We thought we could do that in 2 weeks, in 4 weeks. And it's clear as a global society that was not the case, and that we still live in this new world. So brands, likely many of the brands that you work for, had to make new plans and to really pivot. And so the image that I used on the left here is this influencer promoting a hotel, this great vacation getaway. And a lot of us think of influencers as doing that, living this luxury, lavish lifestyle. And no one was getting on airplanes. Airplanes were grounded. The world stopped. And so everything like you see on the left really stopped. And then everyone had to pivot. And so influencers had to pivot too. And I don't mean every single influencer. There were influencers who may have been lifestyle influencers who were creating content in their homes with their families. Maybe they weren't as impacted. I picked these two influencers to focus on throughout. The woman at the top, her name is Alicia Tanise. She's based in just outside of DC. And the woman on the bottom right you're seeing is Jane Coe. She's based in Austin, Texas. Alicia was a travel blogger. Jane was a travel blogger. Jane also really focused on restaurants within Austin. She's Austin's top food blogger. And so when we locked down, you guys remember restaurants were closed. You could have delivery from DoorDash, but restaurants were closed. So Jane and Alicia were frozen. Like their income that they were planning, they're full-time influencers. And in a pandemic, they had to figure out what are we gonna do? What next? And Alicia traveled a lot, and a lot of her focus was visiting vineyards and wineries. And so she really pivoted to how can she educate her audience at home. She was doing travel guides before, but in this time when she was at home, she thought, why don't I focus on my education? So Alicia began studying to take her WSET Level 1 exam, which is a wine course, to know all about different varietals, all about how wine is grown, how to serve wine, how to taste wine. She's currently studying for her WSET Level 2 exam, which I believe is a requirement for sommeliers around the world to have. So Alicia's investing in her education. And because she's done that, she's now an expert in wine, and she's able to work with so many different wine brands, wine companies who work with, have wine accessories. And she was able to pivot and lean into that direction. Jane Coe on the bottom right, Jane had to figure out, how can I talk about the restaurant scene? How can I talk about travel, what my followers are used to when I'm sitting at home? And so we're gonna go a few slides later, but Jane really dug in support of Austin restaurants, because those are her bread and butter. And she wanted to make sure that once we come through this pandemic and we opened again and restaurants were open, that they would be there for her to go out and to support and to partner with. And so Jane worked with to launch a whole campaign on that I'm going to get in here in just a moment. Not only did influencers have to pivot, brands had to pivot too. And brands, many of you were probably having to postpone any sort of content shoots that you had scheduled. Maybe it's photo shoots or video production shoots. And brands were turning to influencers and saying, hey, we know you produce high value, high quality content. Can you produce it for us? And so the image on the right that you see, the White Claw can, that is actually an ad that one of our influencers shot for Brewmate, which is the case that you put your can in to keep it cold. They were saying, we want you to create this content to live on our platforms, not even on your platforms. We know you have great camera equipment. We like your style. Will you shoot it for us? So that wasn't really influencer marketing, but it was a way for brands to still work with influencers to check the box of what brands needed from a content perspective and still keep influencers afloat. The image with the man and his dog, Starbucks is now asking creators to create content to live on Starbucks channels. So not necessarily even put it on the creators channels, but to say, hey, we want to have this user-generated content. In this pandemic, it's not safe for us to go out and be in homes and be in studios and film this content. So we'd like to pay creators to do this for us. So it was exciting to see brands say, we have this need. We know influencers can do this. We know they're struggling right now. They're having less opportunities come their way. So let's find a way that we can do this. So that was really exciting, continues to be exciting. This, as a matter of fact, this Valentine's Day campaign literally just happened 10 days ago. And so this wasn't something that stopped in, June or July when brands started to quote unquote figure things out. But it's ongoing. And I really believe this isn't something that's going to go away. I think brands are seeing the value of contracting creators to create content that lives on their channels or license their images for other places and not only tap into the influencer's audience. I've also featured on here the big fashion guy. What you see in here is he's standing there and he's featuring the Band-Aid on his arm. Brands that you may not have thought pre-pandemic would be working with influencers are now reaching out in droves to find out how to engage influencers. This partnership with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, focusing on that flu vaccine. And so those of you who may not have worked with influencers or don't really have experience with it may think that it's really just beauty and fashion and CPG brands. We're seeing so many other brands get on board now. We've worked with the Austin Airport, Department of Health and Human Services in Michigan, and so many other, I don't want to call them non-traditional brands, but brands that pre-pandemic you wouldn't have thought would be interested in working with influencers to spread that message. They understand the value of the influencers and their audience. And in this pandemic, I don't know, Anna, I suspect you've probably been on social media more. We all have more time. So brands know this, are leaning into that and saying, eyeballs are on here for more hours per day, for more days per week. Let's get in front of them, because buying in with influencers, it's one of the lower price points from a marketing budget perspective anyways. And then influencers responded to the world around them. So yes, we're in a pandemic. So you see the family here with their dog in the middle, they're out creating content wearing masks. So many brands were like, do we need to have masks in our advertising? Do we not? Well, this is a requirement. Every place you go now, you see a sign on the door that says you must have a mask on to enter. So brands are leaning into that. Influencers are leaning into that. We see also here with Alicia, this Business Insider headline with everything that happened with the with George Floyd this summer and the rise, the momentum once again behind the Black Lives Matter movement. We had influencers talking about how they see diversity as an issue here and really leaning in. And that wasn't just Black creators, that was Asian American creators, that was Hispanic creators, there was even white creators that said, I want to raise my hand and say, I need to do better about ensuring that there's more diversity in the campaigns that I work on. So we see the pandemic, we see the Black Lives Matter movement, we see Jane with her holding a peace sign, I love voting so much. Influencers were so critical in this presidential election in what year are we in now? In 2020, that presidential election. In this image, Jane wasn't talking about what candidate she was voting for. She was talking about how voting is so important to her and how so many years ago, women couldn't vote, and how all the people before her fought to give her this right. So in response to what's going on around them, I think influencers, not just the ones that I featured here, were really responsive. And I think we're really that voice that you weren't hearing necessarily every day. If you're watching CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, it was kind of a unique take on how the world was reacting. And yes, if you were talking about an issue that was really divided down the lines of Democrat, Republican, influencers knew that maybe they were walking a line, and if they lost followers, they were fine with doing that because of they wanted to continue to be authentic. If they were worried about losing followers, they didn't post about it. But more often than not, we were seeing creators really share their opinions in a constructive and helpful way, asking for change and asking for support. I did mention a few slides ago about how Jane Coe was, as a food blogger, she was really invested in Austin restaurants. And so she made a point during the summer to focus on Black-owned restaurants, Black-owned shops, Black-owned eateries, Black-owned food trucks, really leaning into her love and passion of the food and the restaurant scene in Austin, while also saying, hey, this is important that we take a look at the diversity issue as well. So I think, putting every influencer in the same bucket and saying, they're not paying attention, they don't have a grasp on reality. I wanted to highlight a few of them. There were so many more that I could choose from who really did respond in a positive way, knowing that this was part of the global conversation and they had every right to be part of it as well. So before we go here, Taylor, could we put up the next poll question? I'm really curious to know how many of you here today have a TikTok account. I often find myself asking my 16-year-old, what does this mean? How do I do this? Can you help me find this on TikTok? And I've never, ever felt more like my own mother than I have when I ask those questions. Oh, wow. 36% of you do have a TikTok account. That's fantastic. I was expecting a smaller number. I'm in the majority. I do not have a TikTok account, even though I manage a TikTok influencer. Oops, I did not mean to advance the slide. So in this pandemic, so many more eyes moved to TikTok. It became the most downloaded app in the Apple Store last September with 33 million downloads. And brands noticed as well. When I was talking to this group last January, and I was talking about TikTok, like, is it really going to grow? It feels like it's really more for like my son, these teenagers, this younger generation. But then the pandemic happened. We were all at home. We all finished binge watching all of our favorite shows. And so we just turned to our phone and we said, what's new? And TikTok was new. And, people, friends my age in my neighborhood were like, hey, should we do a video, like a collage of us all dancing on TikTok? And number one, no, I'm not on board for that. But it was interesting to see the demographics kind of pivot on TikTok. And, a lot of kids were so embarrassed that their parents were on TikTok. And I did have an account for a minute, and then it was sucking my time and energy. So I deleted it from my phone and just rely on my son now, and I can annoy him with my questions. But brands have recognized that. And the image I chose to accompany telling this story is on TikTok, Golden Retriever Life. This is Kevin and his dog Ellie. And they partnered with Ben & Jerry's on this new dog ice cream. And Ben & Jerry's was saying, hey, we know that there are 20-somethings, teenagers that are on TikTok. We want them to want this product for their dogs. And so they reached out to a series of, I'll call them petfluencers, because there's a different type of influencer for everything. You can have a grandfluencer for grandparents, a twinfluencer for twins. And it's very silly how you can have an influencer for everything. But with so many eyes on TikTok, brands were trying to figure out, how do we get on board? How do we partner with these? Even though it is, 15 to 30 second video bites, eyes are there. And these videos are, the virality, is that the word I'm looking for? is stronger than it is if you're creating an Instagram Reels, or if you, even in some cases, YouTube, just because of how new it is. And it's such short form content that it can be shared and more eyes are on it based on the length of time for this. What I've also found, just from the management perspective, is that it's not just brands, CPG brands, fashion brands, lifestyle brands that are looking to activate on TikTok. I recently was reached out to by a music label that said, hey, one of our talent is launching a song next week. We'd love if one of your talent could feature it in their videos. We just wanted a high energy, positive video. That would be this. We're willing to pay. We're looking at a $1 CPM. What does your audience and engagement look like? So it's interesting to see a year later where TikTok is. Last January, I could speak about what it was in like 27 words. And now I know so much more about it, having worked with creators in that platform and seen the types of conversations and what brands are looking for there. I do want to say, though, that TikTok is still a little bit behind on the analytics perspective. There is not an opportunity to swipe up. And so what you lose on TikTok when you opt for the virality piece of it is you're losing that performance-based marketing. You know what I mean? You can have a link in your bio for them to click on, but someone has to stop, go to your bio, click on that link and do that instead of that swipe up feature that so many of us are used to on TikTok. So I think there's, you know, if we were to meet next year, Anna, let's make a date to talk about influencer marketing next year and see how TikTok has evolved even in that time. You know, there may be new platforms that have arisen and taken over by then, but it is interesting. If you're not on TikTok, I'm not saying you have to download it today. I'm just saying pay attention to it. If your target audience who you're trying to reach are younger people, it's worth a test. And there are creators out there, because TikTok right now, from a pricing perspective, is really the wild, wild west. No one knows how to price it yet. I know what we're charging brands to work with Golden Retriever Life. Some brands are paying it and some brands are saying, I just can't meet that. Okay, that's great. He's not looking at this as his sole income, so he's able to pass on some opportunities where brands won't meet his rate. So there is space to still play budget wise on TikTok, and I would encourage you to look into it if that's where your target audience lives. So I did mention kind of that performance-based influencer marketing. Many of you have your budget set at the beginning of the year, if you're a January to December budget cycle. And if at any point in the year you want to go and say, oh, can I get additional budget? I want to try an influencer campaign. You really have to be able to make your case of, okay, what's it going to do? How's it going to move the needle? Because when I've been in that situation where you walk into the CFO and you ask for more budget and they're like, okay, but what's it going to get me? And nobody wants, oh, it's going to do this for awareness. Okay, awareness doesn't drive sales. You know, we can't track sales in there. And awareness is really those likes, clicks, impressions, how many people saw it and scrolled by that. And we call that vanity metrics because that's what it is. Like, I don't know how many people have purchased based on seeing that. And when you're looking for those additional dollars, you want to say, hey, can I start out with X? I want to assign every influencer their own unique URL, their unique swipe up code, maybe a promotional code. That way you can track it. And I'm not saying you have to start an influencer marketing with a budget of $50,000. You can start at a budget of $5,000 or $10,000 and just test things and see what works for you. You can A/B test one influencer against another and see who performs better. And when you have those swipe up links, when you have those promo codes, that's your opportunity to really see who's performing, what message performs best. And really take that back, observe that, and then be able to ask for additional budget, having those proof points behind you. One of the things from the talent management perspective where I sit too, I have 3 influencers who I'm managing on a regular basis, all the opportunities that come in. And at the end of 2020, kind of when agencies went dark for like the last 2 weeks of the year, everyone kind of took the end of year off. I sat down with the talent and I said, what content do you believe performed best this year? What partnership content? And they would tell me, and I said, why? Why do you think that performed best? Because we often don't get, as a talent manager and as the creators, they're not knowing how many people purchase the product, how many people, I mean, they can see swipe ups, they can see those metrics within their analytics, their back end analytics. But what I heard time after time was so many of my followers sent me DMs, showed me they bought the products, or asked me a week later what my promo code was, that they were going to go out and buy it. That is so invaluable. Brands can't see that. When an influencer pulls their analytics, they're not seeing DMs. DMs are direct messages. Those are private. And so I asked the creators, I said, could you send me like 5 to 10 screenshots of those conversations that you're having with your followers? I'd just like to share those with the brands. And so because I did that, I reached out and said, hey, you know, as we're wrapping up the year, I spoke with this influencer. She was so excited to work with you this year. She saw her highest engagement. Here's a screenshot of 8 different DMs she got from her followers. That prompted the agency to reach back out to me and say, could we do a Valentine's campaign? Could we do an April campaign? And so now we were able to get additional business out of that. I didn't follow up saying, hey, we'd really like to work with you again, blah, blah. I just shared metrics that they weren't able to see before, and that those conversations happened 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2 months after the campaign launch, to show that it's still important, and that the followers know, go back to that influencer, he or she has that relationship, has that experience with the product. So I think I just want to drive in that as you're doing campaigns, consider those swipe ups. And if you don't know, you have to have 10,000 followers on Instagram before you can have that swipe up feature. So yes, there are still influencers that you can work with with 10,000 followers, 15,000 followers at a reasonable budget for you, where they still feel like they're getting paid well, and you're able to use those swipe ups. If you want to work with creators who have, you know, 9,999 or less, you don't have that opportunity to measure that swipe up. And in that situation, you could give them their own code. It could be AMA Phoenix 20 for 20% off whatever your product is. You'd want to definitely make it like Anna 20, Taylor 20, so you can track how each individual influencer is performing. And so that long-term brand optimization is important. I understand on the brand side when they say, oh, I'd like to work with an influencer on this campaign. Okay, that's cool. She's a brand ambassador. Like, she has used, I'm going to say, Gain laundry detergent. She's used Gain laundry detergent her whole life. Is there an opportunity to make this a longer partnership? And, you know, everybody wants to see success the first time, and then how do we move forward in there? And so when you invest in these longer term partnerships, you're going to yield the greatest results. So I use Alicia again here. I don't think it would be improper to mention the brand. This is Loft. She did a campaign with them. This is the brand that I reached out to over the holidays. She did a campaign with them in the fall. And then I reached out and said, hey, this is the greatest engagement she's had. Here's what her followers are doing. So you see the Valentine's content. They launched some new sleepwear. She did that. So these are all longer term partnerships. And she is now that person that her followers turn to when they have a question about, hey, I want to shop at Loft. Do you have a promo code? Or those slippers that you had on looked super fuzzy and, you know, cozy. Would you recommend them? You know, just, and they're asking her that in the DMs. They're not going back and scrolling through all of her content to find that post and comment on it again. But those longer term engagements really, like I say here, they yield the greatest results for the brand, because you're creating another ambassador for you to live out there. And then Clubhouse. I want to put up another poll here to see who's on Clubhouse. I'm guessing some of you are going to say no. So quickly, Clubhouse is an app that's available. I don't even think they call it beta. I think they're in alpha mode right now, and they're only available on iPhones. I like to call it the LinkedIn with audio. It's audio only. And it's called Clubhouse. So you've got to be invited into the Clubhouse. I'm using air quotes if you can't see me. You've got to be a cool kid who's invited into Clubhouse. So it's invite only right now. And I do have invites. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn after this and ask for an invite, I think I have 6 invites available. Again, you have to be iPhone only. So I'm interested to see the results. Oh, wow. Okay. 33% of you are. If you are, follow me at Tami Nealy. If you're not, what I do like about this is that there's amazing conversations that are happening in there. I put this graphic up. We did a conversation in Clubhouse, and they have different, again, air quotes, they have different rooms in Clubhouse that you can host, you can join. If you're hosting a room, you're moderating it, you decide who you want to bring up on stage to speak. People can raise their hands. As the moderator, you see it. There is no video. It is audio only, 100%. There's no recording. There's no way to communicate with anybody in Clubhouse today. I would have to go to their bio, and you can DM them if they linked their Twitter account. You can DM them if they link their Instagram account, but the bio is wide open. My bio on Clubhouse has my email address. I tell you I want to connect with you, and it tells you about who I am within the influencer marketing space, how I want to connect and help you grow as an influencer, or help you find the right influencers to work with if you're a brand. But what's great about this, that's how I'm using it from an influencer perspective. I think I saw someone in here earlier who introduced themselves, who works for, I think it was Grand Canyon Conservatory. Sorry if I'm getting that wrong. I just did a quick glance at that. You could go on there and you could look for travel and tourism groups to connect with. You could, there's conversations happening in there about hot yoga. There's, anything that you can imagine, there's conversations happening in there about it. And this is a social platform that is skyrocketing. I joined in December, and I think there was about 500,000 people on the platform. And in January, there was over 2 million people who were in the platform. And there's so much conversation happening now about how can brands activate within Clubhouse. I was, it's funny, just before this, I was on the phone with a social media influencer, and he was telling me that he was invited to host a room in Clubhouse, and a brand wanted to partner with him and have them talk about how he used their product. And he said, "You can pay me for that." And they're like, "What?" They're like, "We just want you to talk about it." And he's like, "Yeah, you want me to endorse it. You want me to talk about how I use your product in my life. You can pay me for that." It's similar to Instagram. It's similar to Facebook or TikTok or any other platform that he's on. You can pay me to have this conversation because my audience is going to follow me on there. They're going to trust what I have to say. So Clubhouse is what TikTok was a year ago. I think a year from now, we're going to be like, "Oh my goodness, how are we never doing influencer integrations on Clubhouse?" So I do think Clubhouse is something to keep your eye on. I think they have an opportunity in front of them as a platform to figure out how they're going to get on Android devices and reach more people. But I hosted this conversation in a Clubhouse room on February 3rd, and 3 different brands had reached out to me in the following 2 weeks to say, "Hey, I was really impressed with, what Kevin said or what Alicia said or Tina said. Is there, can I learn a little bit more about them and possibly, talk about what a campaign could look like with them?" So Clubhouse is very powerful. It's finding its footing right now and how it could work with influencers. But I would encourage you, whether you want to engage influencers on Clubhouse or not, get on Clubhouse, message me. I can do an invite for you. If I run out of invites, maybe there's more people in this group. The 33% who are on here might be willing to share an invite as well. But check it out. If you're not on there, if you're not interested in it, at least follow along what's going on with it in the news, because I think it's really something different that doesn't exist today that could turn into something very, very powerful. And then last but not least, I do work for Find Your Influence. I want to do this kind of shameless plug. I know this isn't all about Find Your Influence, but we are based in Scottsdale. I say that loosely because we haven't been in the office in 50 weeks, which is so crazy to say, but we are the industry's first all-in-one solution. There were other solutions out there before that were saying, "Let us help you find influencers," or "Let us help you execute your campaigns, but bring your influencers." We are that first all-in-one platform. Influencers opt in to be discovered in our platform. which means when they opt in, they agree to all the terms and conditions. They say that, hey, any campaign we execute through your platform, we're going to follow all the rules of the Federal Trade Commission. We're going to follow all the brand guidelines as they're outlined. We're going to, yes, count on us. Today, we have 100,000 influencers that brands can work with in our platform. And on top of that, if there's an influencer you want to work with who's not in our platform, we can go fund them. For example, this is not an exaggeration. A brand was asking us if we could find female Punjabi truck drivers who are based in the Pacific Northwest. So we found them. We found them on Instagram, and we were able to say, here's who we found. So no ask is too difficult for us. Our team loves finding those influencers to help brands. And so I know I've chatted a lot. I definitely want to open it up to questions. Here is how you can contact me. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can email me. But I'm excited to open it up and see what questions I can answer today.
Excellent, Tami. Well, thank you so very much. We do have a few questions. First question that I saw came in is, how much of an increase do you think you have seen of brands who started using influencers for the first time after the pandemic versus before the pandemic? So since the pandemic, how much of an increase are brands using influencers?
Ballpark.
Say that again, Anna?
Ballpark,
I would say, in general, I don't think it was our worst year last year. So that's good. So consistently, we're still seeing those CPG fashion brands showing up and saying, hey, we want to work with influencers. But it is exciting to see the Texas Department of Agriculture, Austin Airport, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Anytime I hear from our team of like, oh, we're working with this brand or this agency, I'm like, oh, wow, it's just not someone who you traditionally would think to work with influencers. So it's an exciting time. And I hate to say that being in a pandemic is an exciting time, but to see so many let's just call them non-traditional brands really lean into the power of influencers.
Excellent. Another question we have here is, are we going to start using the terms content creators and influencers interchangeably? Although we understand that content creators aren't necessarily solely influencers, are they going to kind of become one and the same when we're talking about them?
I think so, simply because, like I mentioned before, talent are being contracted to create content for brands, to live on a brand's website, to live on a brand's social page. So, and I know that many influencers don't like to be called influencers. They feel dirty with that word, but it's up to every single person what they want to be called. So I do kind of alternate between creators and influencers. So today it's an interchangeable word. I think there are some creators who really flock to the influencer side and others who say, please don't ever call me an influencer. I'm a creator. My brand is my brand, and that's what I create around. I don't necessarily, because a lot of times influencers, we talk about the push-pull. So how many brand pieces are you going to put out every week? You don't want to follow somebody who every day is saying, try this product, try this product. I love wearing this shirt. I love these glasses. Like, you're going to get sick of that. You're there because you want to know more about their life or how they do business or whatever that piece that drew you to them in the first place was. And it wasn't about buying every latest, greatest product. So if we're talking about like pushing content out there that your brand came to you for. So say maybe you're a mommy blogger. So you're pushing 60% of your content every week is about how I survive at this life of being a mom and doing all of this. And then 40% is, hey, I survive when I use this, and diaper rash goes away when I use this. So it's got to be a balance. You don't want to turn your audience off, if that's helpful.
Excellent. And then, how much of an increase do you think you're seeing where the subject matter of their marketing has changed? For example, talking more about social topics versus just sticking to business, product, or service topics?
I think it's changed throughout 2020 when that conversation is trending in the news. So I don't think we're seeing creators talk as much today about the Black Lives Matter movement as they were when it was trending in the news. Now, that's not right. That's still a topic we should be talking about and discussing openly every single day. And we shouldn't just leave that to Black creators white creators, Asian American creators, you know, everybody should be talking about this. I understand how it's what's going on in the world and how do we want to be relevant now. But I absolutely commend those people who are still talking about those issues. You know, we're past the election. Who's still talking about what their elected officials, even on the local level, are doing? Probably not as much as you would maybe want them to, but they're trying to stay relevant to what's happening in the world. And I know from me personally, I use Instagram when I'm not working very minimally, just because it is my job. But I do want to escape the real world sometimes too. I do want to say, I don't want to talk about influencer marketing. I don't want to talk about the pandemic. I just want to get in and I want to see, like, what's the new plant that I should have in my house? So I'm going to follow people who talk about that because it gives me a break. It's kind of a release from the real world. Again, it's not the influencers or the creators' responsibility to deliver that message about whatever that current topic is, about wearing a mask and doing all of these things that the world is talking about. They also want to be there to be that respite and to provide a break for people too.
Excellent. And then you had mentioned that, you know, for budgeting, that some people might find it worth to, you know, you mentioned like your golden retriever influencer, that some people will see it and say, oh yes, it's worth it, and other people won't. For someone who's maybe just getting started with influencer marketing, can you give someone a ballpark idea or, you know, an average budget that someone might spend to do a campaign with an influencer?
Yeah. So if you want to work with one influencer and you're going to do it all by yourself, it depends on the influencer's total audience reach, their engagement. An average engagement for an influencer is 2 to 3%. So if you see an influencer who has 14% engagement, they're going to charge more because their audience is asking questions. They're really engaged in a measurable way. I'm not counting the DMs there. I'm counting in those vanity metrics, that measurable way. Influencers who have, you know, under 1,000 followers, you might be able to pay them $100 for a campaign. But influencers who have over 1 million, you're probably going to be paying them $5,000. You know, that might be a TikTok video. That might be an Instagram in-feed post with an Instagram story. You know, I can't give you a precise number. If you're going to work with a platform like Find Your Influence, we often recommend that you start with a budget of $10,000. You're going to work with more than one influencer there. And you really need to set your goals smaller if that's what your initial budget is. But you can do it on a campaign. You know, you can say, I want to try one influencer at $100. That's what I want to test it with. I don't know what you're going to compare it to if you're only using one influencer, but you can certainly do it at any budget. Your results are going to vary depending on what your investment is.
Excellent. And I have one other question here at the moment, but definitely start thinking about other questions you might want to ask Tami. You know, and it has to do with the metrics here. Is there a value that can be defined for vanity metrics? Because we know CFOs don't necessarily buy the brand awareness argument.
Yes. So for most of you on the phone, you understand the marketing funnel starts with awareness and then moves its way down. So if you're going to start with awareness, how can you, and I don't know if this is an answer to your question, so I'm sorry, I'm just going to kind of ad lib here. How can you say, okay, we're going to start with awareness, those likes, clicks, impressions, and then we're going to work with those influencers again, and we're going to have them try the new flavor of Gatorade that's coming out. We're going to have them introduce that next product. So that's more awareness, but now it's very specific. And then we're going to have them talk about, you know, 3 weeks later, how they've continued to put that flavor of Gatorade in their children's lunch or take it to a soccer game or a baseball game. And they're going to say, I love it so much. Hey, if you want to try it too, use my code Tami20 for 20% off when you swipe up here. So I really think it's about having the influencer having multiple touch points and moving them through that marketing funnel that we're also used to.
Yeah.
Excellent. At this point, if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask Tami a question, we still have some time today.
Yeah, if anyone else has any questions, but that was a great explanation to that last question. Because as you know, the brand awareness argument only resonates with marketers, and everyone else in the company you have to convince
Yeah.
how important it is.
I would also say to that argument, you likely have a public relations budget. You're paying someone to do PR for you. PR is awareness, it's brand awareness. So if you don't want it sitting in the marketing bucket and you can't justify it there, can you justify it when it's under the PR umbrella? Because PR is about awareness as well.
Great. Okay. I don't think we have any more questions, right, Taylor? You don't see any more.
I don't see any in the chat. Like I said, at this point, if there's a question that you just want to ask Tami, feel free to unmute yourself. Oh, Nat, do you have a question or you want to say something?
I do. Hey, Tami, how are you?
Hi, Nat.
Thanks for doing this. Great stuff.
Of course.
There seems to be some discussion these days around influencer marketing and a model where you only pay for results. Are you seeing a trend in that direction? Is that a workable model?
I'm seeing where I sit on the talent side, I'm seeing that come in a little bit more on the talent management side, where brands are reaching out and saying, hey, we've got this new product. We don't have budget to pay an influencer, but we'd be happy to do affiliate commission sales. You know, we 10%, 20%. And I don't want to speak for all influencers. Those who are doing it full time, who I know are saying, not interested in that. It's too much work, because to do that, you might need to commit to 5, 6, 8 posts, and you're not being paid for it. You know what I mean? Like, that's not income that you can count on.
Right.
Influencers who are just starting out, maybe who are micro influencers, maybe doing it on the side, they might say, that'd be a nice sort of additional income. You know, if I have the time, I'll do that. But today, conversations that I have every single week, Nat, with brands is the influencer created their work, they delivered to you on time. The payment terms were, let's say, net 30. We're looking at net 75. They delivered on time. What are you going to pay? And so a lot of it's influencers are budgeting their next month. How are they going to pay the mortgage? How are they going to make the car payment? How are they going to buy groceries?
Right.
On payment terms that were set out. And when you're looking at that commission model, that's not something that they can rely on and budget on. So I believe that's why the influencers who I've been exposed to pass on those more often than not.
Cool. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I see that in my business with retainers and commissions and so forth, and have similar conversations.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, I think then we'll close this webinar, but Tami, thank you very much. So there's been a lot of takeaways with this, you know, the connection of influencer marketing and performance marketing. I find it very interesting that brands have pivoted in how they're using influencers and content creators in different ways. Right, this past year, everybody's had to start thinking about new ways to do it. I think it's very interesting that you're seeing organizations, agencies using influencer marketing where they never did before the pandemic. But again, people are trying to find different ways. And last year when we had Tami, I was the one who said to Tami before she even gave her presentation, I just don't know about influencer marketing. You know, I had a relatively negative impression because it was the Kardashians and, you know, that kind of thought that I only had in my mind. And TikTok was kind of brand new and now it's huge. So when we have our date for next year at this time, Tami, I know we're going to have a lot more to talk about with Clubhouse and even TikTok and possibly something new. So, you know, we'll definitely look to talk to you again. And then again, just everybody keeping in mind, finding new ways to market, because we have to be creative in this crazy time that we're in. So thank you, Tami, very much. I took a lot of notes, and everyone will receive the, you know, the presentation and the recordings. So you will get that. And if you have any questions for Tami, you can always let me know and I can pass them along. But thank you, Tami, again for joining us.
Thanks for the invite. Have a great day.
And everybody, just we will, I do want to thank our sponsors once again. And again, Taylor, thank you very much for hosting. And if you need any video, please consider giving Tami a call, Taylor a call. And we'd like to thank our supporters once again. And I will have more information on our next event coming up on March 11th. I don't have it now. So again, just watch your email and watch our website, amaphoenix.org, for more information. But otherwise, thank you everyone for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. And we will hopefully see you again in 2 weeks. Have a great afternoon, everybody.